javelin with the Thomas roller about to launch that 800-gram javelin away. Now then, what's he done with that one? Oh, I say! That is a sensational throw. That's way over 90 meters. Well, the questions were...
Assalamualaikum and hi to Sir Maknur and my fellow classmates. Today, my friends and I are going to present about 2D sports kit analysis of javelin throw as a group task for SPS 501 Sports Biomechanics. So, stay tuned. Before I go any further, I would like to introduce to my amazing group members. Me myself is Muhammad Farhan bin Luqman, Muhammad IRFAN AIMAN bin ITHNIN, Muhammad MUZAKKIRIN bin YAHYA, NAIMAH binti ZAINUDDIN, and HIDAYAH binti MINHAT. And we are all ready to present about 2D sports skill analysis for javelin throw. Before we go any further into the sports skill analysis, let us first learn about what is javelin. During the old days, people used spear for everyday hunting and warfare. So, the sport of javelin throw evolved from the everyday use of spear, and now javelin has become the most famous and one of the main events in athletics nowadays. So, what is the objective of the javelin throw? The objective of javelin, where the athlete must throw a metal javelin as far as possible using only one arm. So, after that, the distance will be recorded, and the longer the distance, the higher the score will be. Next, the athlete must hold the javelin by its corded grip, where the little finger is closest to the tip of the implement. Now for this one, there are 3 types of javelin grip, which are the American grip, the Finnish grip, and the V grip. So different athletes will use different types of grip according to their preferability and also their coach's recommendations. Now, the weight and the length of the javelin are different for men and women. For men, the javelin is 800 grams with 2.7 meter, while for women, the weight for the javelin is 600 grams and 2 meter long. So there is a little about the introduction of the sports. Now I will pass to Hidayah Minhat to explain about what are the joints, the muscles, and also the bones that are involved during the javelin throw. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Hidayah binti Minhat. Okay, so next I will explain about the movement of the skills, which is what kind of joints that may involve in these skills. Okay, so as you can see here, there is 5 types of joint that has been involved in these skills. Okay, the first one is glenohumeral joint. The second one is synovial joints, which is at the elbow. And the third one is ankle joint. The fourth one is hip joint, and the last one is synovial joint at the knee. Okay, as you can see here, all of these joints are located at each of the part of our bodies that may involve in the skills, which is each of the movement that all the athletes will do before throwing the javelins. Okay, next is the main muscle involved in javelin throw. Okay, so also as you can see in the slides, there is 8 types of muscles, the main muscle that may involve in javelin throw. Okay, let's go through one by one. Okay, the first muscle that may involve in javelin throw is soleus. The second one is gastrocnemius. The third one is our quadriceps. The fourth one is hamstrings. The fifth one is tricep. The sixth one is delta. The seventh part is forearms, and the last one is external oblique. Okay, so all of these main muscles are very important and very useful for all of the athletes to help them to get the best result in order to throw the javelins. So that all of the athletes out there, they need to improve and strong the main muscle to help them get more power so that they can throw the javelins far and get the best result of their javelin throw. Okay, next is I will explain about the bones that may involve in this throwing javelin skills. Okay, so there is 8 types of bone that involve in these skills. The first one is humerus, the second one is our scapula, the third one is clavicle, and the fourth one is pelvic, our pelvic, and the fifth one is femur, the sixth one is carpals, our carpals, and the seventh part is fibula, and the last one is tibia. Okay, as you can see, our carpal also involved in our skills, because we use our carpals to hold the javelins, and then our pelvic is involved because when athletes are running, so this is the lower body part of athlete bones that may involve, and all of these bone categories under the main bone involved in these skills, because it is the Okay, next we will move to the next slide, which is task analysis. Okay, so task analysis will be divided into 5 parts, which is the 5 techniques and also 5 steps of the analysis of the movement that athlete may be used. Okay, so next. Okay, next is approach runs. Approach runs are divided into 2 types, which is the first one is cyclic phase, and the second one is a acyclic approach phase. Okay, so we will go through to the cyclic phase first. Okay, so in this cyclic phase, this is the beginning phase, is where it is the start of the approach run. The objective of this phase is to achieve an optimal approach velocity. Okay, so as you can see in the slides, the approach velocity shows an individually optimal trends, and it is also involve the biomechanic factor of influence, includes the length of the acceleration phase, and also stride length, and the last one is stride rate. Okay, next we move to the second approach phase, which is the first one is accelerations, so the second one is release preparatory phase, or also known as acyclic approach phase. Okay, so in this phase, basically this is the phase where the starts of the javelin withdrawal, generally in the fifth from the last approach strides, which is from the acceleration phase. Okay, then the objectives of this release preparatory phase is to establish biomechanical release conditions which contribute to attaining a grid throwing distance. Okay, next is the biomechanical objective is it is an optimal approach velocity at the beginning of the release, and a body position that may of the movement of planting the foot of the throwing arm sides, which is the bracing stride, and also release, which optimize the release. Okay, next is biomechanical factors of influence. It includes the stride length of the athlete and also the landing angle of the impulse stride. This is the last approach stride that involved in this release preparatory phase. Okay, next is the release phase, which is the third phase. Okay, so the objectives of the release phase is to achieve an optimum velocity of the release as well and optimum angles of the release, and the last one is an optimum angle of the altitude, which means that the release phase is the phase the right after the javelin was thrown and released from the athlete hands, and it will calculate about the altitude, the angle, and also the velocity that has been produced by the athlete. Okay, so this phase begin with the planting of the bracing leg. Bracing leg is the where the throwing arm sides, which is mean where the if like the arm side that athlete has been used is like the right sides, so maybe the planting leg is the left leg. Okay, next is the objective of the this release phase is to attainment of a maximal throwing distance. Okay, so for the biomechanical objectives of this release phase is to achieve maximum velocity of release. Next is optimum angles of release and also attack of the javelins. Okay, so the fourth one is the braking phase. Braking phase is in order to not to fall the lines, which is the final lines before we throw the javelins. Okay, the approach velocity, which is the velocity that has been produced by the athlete, need to be reduced by 30 to 40 degrees, and also need to reduce to 0, because it may help the athlete to not get fall after release phase. As you know, most of the athlete that might get some fall of do some mistakes, which is at this braking phase, which is the athlete may not be realize that they make the mistakes, such as like they have stepped on the line, which make them to fall the whole games, and then it is because the velocity that has been produced by the athlete is not reduced. So that means they did not they can't control the velocity, so that they will get falls. Okay, so the objectives of this braking phase is to minimize the braking distance, as I said before, and which is the necessary for further and complete declaration after the release phase. Okay, so for the biomechanical objectives of this braking phase is length of the braking strides. Length of the braking stride is example like the length after the release phase that has been made by the athlete, and the length the stride that has the final stride that has been produced by the athlete. Okay, so the last one is flight of the javelins. Okay, as compared to the other movement phase of the javelin throwing, the flight is a special since it only concerns that concern about the javelins only. Okay, and the athlete cannot further influence the movement of the javelins, because the javelin only the aspect that may influence the javelin is only the wind and also the force or pressure that has been made by the athlete. Okay, so the factor influence of the javelin flight is the difference between the velocity of the javelin and also the velocity of the wind. Okay, other than that, the aerodynamic force also appear, which operate on the center of the pressure of the javelins.
Okay, the next one is the forms of motion. In javelin throw, there are two motion, which is angular motion and projectile. Angular momentum is the product of inertial moment and the angular velocity of the moment. When the proximal segment of the arm slow down, the angular momentum is transferred to the distal segment of the arm due to the conservation of momentum. After that, it will pass on to the javelin at the release point. And then if the moment of the inertia decrease, it will make the angular momentum to remain the same, and also the angular velocity must increase. The next one is projectile. Projectile is the motion where an object, which is the projectile move along the parabolic path. So the path of the projectile is what we call as trajectory. So in Javelin, it being released due to flight of the projectile along with three factors, which are speed, height, and also the angle. So in order to determine the javelin throw distance, the speed of release is the most important factor. Okay, javelin throw skill are categorized as first class level system because of the extension at the elbow during throwing the javelin. So as we know, the first class level system is where the fulcrum lies in the middle of the component and between the load and effort. So for javelin skill, the elbow acts as fulcrum, the weight of the javelin as the load, and the effort is the tricep. But javelin throw also involve third class level system because it happened during the elbow flexion. So the third class level system is where the effort lies between the fulcrum and load. So in the approach of javelin throw, the athlete will flex their elbow to achieve maximum speed. The athlete arm must straight when release the javelin, so that the effort could be transferred to the javelin. By turning the lower body, throw is initiated. So combined with the passiveness of the upper body, this turning of the lower body produce a twisting of the body's heart, which called as torque. So this torque produce stretch reflex in the musculature of torso, allowing the implement to be further accelerate as the core unwind. In javelin throw, there are four phases, four proper technique of throwing, which are an approach, the 5 steps rhythm, throwing, and also recovery. As for the approach, athlete will need to carry the javelin at head height while bend the arm with elbow pointing forward. So in order to help getting the shoulder, elbow, and also the wrist to relax, palm of the hand need to face forward. So it also is a reining action toward the athlete. And also without lengthening the stride, this tail will constantly increase to the maximum controllable speed. Other than that, both junior and senior athletes have different length of the approach run. The junior will have 4 to 8 strides, and the senior will have 8 to 14 strides. So, but both of them will finish on the right foot contact with the ground. Then the second one is 5 steps rhythm. In the first and second step, the athlete will move throwing arms straight and back to rear until it fully stretched at the shoulder height. And this should be done while landing on the right foot during approach phase. So to avoid too long running sideways, the athlete must not rush to withdrawal. Instead, they need to accelerate ahead the javelin rather than push back the javelin. So while doing the movement, the javelin must keep pointing in the direction of throw. The step 3 is the preparation before releasing the javelin, where the javelin must be held close to the head and point in line with eyebrow. So with eyes look straight ahead, the athlete should remain in that position until reach the final delivery movement. For step 4, step 4 also known as drive phase, where the right leg step is flatter and longer. So it takes place after push off with left leg. And due to the long stride, the trunk will start to lean back, and it facilitates long final delivery pull of throwing arm. For step 5 is where the athlete left leg must bring forward in order to place the body in position of strength. So when waiting for the left foot to come down, the right leg must push forward and upward. But the athlete must not push the left foot down because it will shift the center of gravity behind the right leg and losing the driving motion forward. So in order to prevent the knee from collapse, the athlete must brace left leg length, flatted foot, and flatted foot must pointing forward. So other than that, driving through the hips will accelerate as both legs on the ground, and it caused the upper trunk to form backward. And prior to delivery, top was scraped. And after that, and other than that, throwing arm must keep extend at shoulder height while relaxing the free arm ahead of the body. Okay, the next step is throwing. In throwing phase, in order to ensure the height of release, the athlete's front leg must be extended. So they also need to quickly turn the right hip forward so that it will square with the delivery area. So during the final thrust at the right side of the body, the athlete must relax the left arm and remain blocked. Besides that, athlete's eyes must always look forward toward the javelin point. And to create the stability during the flight, the javelin rotates clockwise, and this is because the outward movement of the elbow along with the release of the javelin fingers. Okay, the last step is the recovery. The recovery after delivery, right over the left leg while maintaining the left foot on the ground. And after that, the athlete must immediately after the release of javelin, the athlete must quickly bring the right leg forward. This is because to avoid falling off throw, and the athlete must place the foot on the ground to absorb forward momentum with the legs slightly bent.
For this slide, I will talk about the kinematic and kinetic analysis of the skill. The purpose of analysis to analyze several movements of the athlete during the javelin throw or technique that may need to be examined for the velocity of movement in the early, middle, and late phase in range of motion. If we using a video, then we will determine the time between frames to examine the movement over the time of the activity. Besides, observe how the joint angle changes throughout the movement and which plane it occurs in, and try to determine where the most intense effort occurs within the range of motion around each particular joint, and help identify points that can be improved the technique for a better result. So we will go to the next slide. This slide I will talk about the setup of the video and analysis. Okay, the video analysis to calculate the accurate measurement from the video footage. So we need to have collected the video footage in the correct manner. So we take the video from the sagittal plane and lateral view to get the best point of view of the movement. So the distance between the subject and the camera is 1.01 meter for the clear view of the skill movement. Then we use the application of Kinovia to make it easier for complete tools to capture slow-mo, compare, and measure the technical performance. So we will go to the next slide. For this slide, the time taken acceleration or speed of the subject from the approach phase to the release phase is 3.69 seconds. The measurement of speed and velocity are used to describe the rate at which a body moves from one position to the next, or how fast it is moving. Speed is the rate of change distance, and its value is calculated by dividing the distance covered in meter by the time taken in seconds. We can say that faster the time recorded will produce more force effectively and repeatedly is essential to maximum force for the movement or skill that needed to be performed. So we will go to the next slide. Okay, for this slide, the height of release in this analysis is 0.98 meter with angle of release is 31 degree. As we know, the second important is the angle at which the javelin is thrown. The best angle of release for a javelin is between 32 degrees to 36 degrees to get the best throw, but this is tough to achieve consistently. The flight path and distance of the javelin depends on the angle of attack, which is the difference between angle of attitude and angle of velocity vector. If the angle of attitude is larger than the angle of velocity vector, the javelin does not travel in the most aerodynamic way. So means the best thrower is the one who is able to control the angle of release with the prevailing wind. So we will go to the Farhan for the next slide.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Farhan and I will continue to the elbow extension part. Now, according to our analysis of the javelin throw, the angle of elbow extension during the release phase is 145 degrees, while the time taken during the release phase is 0.32 seconds. Now, what do we know? We know that the elbow of the throwing arm is an indicator of the impulse transmission in order to reach the maximum velocity of the elbow. It shows basically the closest correlation with the release velocity of the javelin. Now, high velocity for the elbow is an optimal impulse transmission from the lower extremities to the throwing arm. Now, what are the factors of influence of the impulse transmission? The factor of influence of the impulse transmission from the lower extremity to the throwing arm is the duration of acceleration. Next, we will move on to the body posture. So, the line of the body posture during the release phase is 0.11 meter away from the center of gravity. We can say that the center of the gravity, or COG of the human, is a change considerably because the segments of the body can move their mass with joint rotations. This means that the line of gravity is important to understand and also to be visualized when determining a person's ability to successfully maintain balance. So, when the line of gravity falls outside the base of support, then there will be a reaction that is needed by individual in order to stay balanced. Now, I would like to talk about the strengths and weaknesses during the recorded skill of video analysis. So, as we know, during any recorded video analysis, there will be a strengths and weaknesses. So, for this one, they use a very good quality camera, so it is easy for us to detect any segments. Also, it's easy to detect angles, to detect acceleration, and so on that we want to analyze. Besides that, we can see that the subject also shows he's doing the skill with a proper technique, and that when he does a proper technique, he can reduce his injury during performing the javelin throw. Now, that are some strengths that we found in the recorded video analysis. Now, for the weakness, basically there is a lack of equipment such as 2 different cameras. So why? Because in this video, we can only analyze the subject from the sagittal view, but we cannot analyze the subject from the frontal view, because during this analysis, they only use one camera, and the camera is from the side view or the sagittal view. And other than that, the weakness for this video recording is the distance between the subject and the camera is quite far. So in order for us to really analyze the angles, the velocity, we need to zoom in and take the measurements that is needed.
So now we proceed to the next slide, which is steps for maximizing sports performance in javelin throw. So the first one, as you can see on the slide, is focusing on the kinetic study of movement on each specific part of the body segments and study in the mechanics on how the body works. So basically, the first step tells you that the athlete or the javelin thrower or the coach that train them need to study about the body mechanics, how it works and how it cooperate with the javelin throw segments of each body parts. So the next one, which is the second one, is we need to analyze of the javelin throw, which is the throw-like movement pattern, which involves the movement of the joints sequentially or one after the other that will be utilized in the javelin throw. So basically, we need to know each characteristic of movement in each sequence of movements according sequentially, which is in javelin throw, basically the athlete run first with their legs, and then he transfer the muscle parts of the body to focus more on hand to throw the javelin throw pole. So the third one is achieve a true direct pulling back of the throwing hand into a position in which of the arm is fully extended and the hand is at approximately shoulder high. Okay, approximately shoulder high, not too low or not too high, just approximately the shoulder high to get a full thrust of the throw, and following each steps consequently, which is in this case we know that javelin throw we need a follow through. Yeah, after we throw it, we need a follow through to not harm our body and just go flow with the force of our throw. Okay, the next one is which is the fourth one is towards the final stage. This momentum accelerates the proximal segments of the throwing arm, which then decelerates to allow the transfers of momentum along the arm, and resulting in a high velocity at the end point, which is after we follow through the final stage, we also need to accelerate the momentum of it so that we can produce a large amount of force, so that we throw the pole of the bar. I don't know the pole or the bar of the javelin throw stick. We throw it with acceleration that is fast and high enough to it go further. Okay, high velocity, which we can create a high end point of the throw that we do. And the last ones, the principle of leverage means that when using a third class lever to produce force, it's often best to maximize the length of the lever being used and to throw the object at the end of the lever. So basically, all of these steps for maximizing the sports performance is basically based on the principle of leverage in the third class lever that produce force. Okay, which mean that if we learn and focus more on this kind of leverage in the third class of lever, we can highly produce a large amount of force and also increasing our performance in javelin throw for this kind of sport. So basically, that's all of it for the steps. So for the next slide, in conclusion, javelin throw is a kind of sport that need to know the objective of it, which is to throw as far as possible. Okay, compared with most other throwing implements, the javelin is relatively aerodynamic, and it would appear that a thrower's body position at the instant of final foot strike, athlete's ability to transfer momentum between the lower body and the upper body during the delivery, and coordination of the working hand segments in the most effective manner are linked to a success in event. So yeah, the objective of javelin throw, of course, to throw as far as possible to get a highest point in the tournament or in the competition. So basically, the biomechanics that we learn or study, basically we want to enhance the performance of athlete in javelin throw. So that's it for our presentation, and thank you. Assalamualaikum.